Hello, good afternoon everyone and welcome to today's webinar. My name's Jackie and today I'm going to be talking you through clearing out records as part of our series. So this morning we did Clear Audit Trail. This follows on nicely from Clear Audit Trail, but we also have some other upcoming sessions around other modules in the software as well, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. So first of all, I'll just do some housekeeping. So today you're joining us, but you're placed on mute. And that just means if you do want to speak to us, if you want to ask any questions, then you will need to just use the questions panel there. So that's the icon. It looks like a speech bubble with the question mark in the middle there. And that will allow you to type your questions across to us. And you can do that throughout today's session. You don't need to wait till the very end if you've got any questions there. We've got both Abby and Michael on in the background for your questions, so they'll see if they can get those answered. And where possible, we'll pick up live and on the demo too. There is also a handout for today's session, so if you want to take a copy of that, now is probably your best opportunity. The icon for that is the one that looks like a document with the folded corner, and that will allow you to take a copy of the slides. As always, there will be a follow-up email, and in that follow-up email will be a recording and also the link to future webinars as well. So please do bear that in mind. If you want to watch this back, there will be either a recording or a link to a recording. Okay. So this is what we're going to cover today. So first of all, why would you want to clear out your records? And then we're going to do a really brief Clear Audit Trail recap. Okay, we're aware some of you will have been there this morning. We don't really want to have to go over the same things for you. If you haven't joined the Clear Audit Trail session before, don't worry, there is a recording available. Okay, so you can catch up on that. But we will do a really quick recap on there. And then I'm going to go through deleting customer suppliers and nominal codes with some examples. We'll also talk about compressing your data, so what we need to do to just regain that disk space that has been freed up through deleting records. And at the end, I'm just going to touch on an alternative option if you've got records that won't clear. Okay, so inactive records. And then at the end, we're going to pick up any final outstanding questions there. So first of all, just before we do start, I am just going to pop a poll across to you all. So this should appear on your screen in a second or two. This poll is just asking if you've actually attended or viewed the Clear Audit Trail session. So we did run it this morning. We ran it a couple of weeks ago. We ran it just before Christmas, and we do have a recording. So there has been lots of opportunity. But like I say, if you have missed it, don't worry. The recording's there to watch at a time that suits you. Okay, so let's just see if we can get those votes coming through. Try and get a good portion of you. So try and get around 70% of the vote. And there we go, 71%. So I'm just going to close it down there now. Okay, so today actually, majority of you haven't attended the Clear Audit Trail session. Okay, so we've had a few of you have, but 61% of you haven't. So like I say, we will briefly touch on it today, but if you want the ins and outs of a Clear Audit Trail, please do locate that recording. Okay, you'll be able to watch it in your own time. And no doubt we'll be doing another live one in the near future too. Okay, so thank you very much for that, because it's really good and insightful for us to understand when we're doing a series, are you getting access to the full series? So thank you for that. Okay, just going to quickly hide that poll and get back to the screens. There we go. Okay, so first of all, we're just going to talk about why clear your records out. Okay, we tend to do this series around this time of year because new year, everyone's wanting to have a clear out and getting ready for the new financial year or the new calendar year. But it is optional, okay? So you don't have to clear out records, but you may find that your data is getting into a position where you do want to do some of these routines to try and regain some space. So there's no pressure from us here at Sage to clear out your data. There's no absolute limit, okay? So what may work for somebody else may be completely different for you in terms of the number of records and items you have in your software, because it doesn't just rely on your software, it relies on things like your PC speeds, your processing speed, your internet speeds if you're using remote data access, network. So there's lots of other things that contribute to it. We do have recommended levels, and I can show you an article a little bit later on that talks about the recommendations, okay, but they're not absolute limits. It's not something that's going to stop the software working if you meet that limit. What it also does if you clear out your records is it just means that the data you're using day in, day out is the most up-to-date data. It's the data that you need here and now. You're not trawling back through sort of 10, 15 years of data each and every time. So it makes things like your searches and your filters work more effectively because they're only filtering through relevant data. As I mentioned, they're clearing out older data could potentially speed up some general processing in the software in some cases, but I always do caveat that with remember those other things that can also contribute to speed. So things like antivirus can also contribute to speed, network speeds, etc. Okay, so if you're experiencing speed issues, you might want to look at the size of your data, but please do be open to the fact that there could be other causes too. Okay, so we're going to just talk briefly about Clear Audit Trail because this session here links into another process. Now tomorrow morning, in fact I'll double check that, but tomorrow we are covering clearing out invoices, orders and records. Now that particular step does not link to any other feature. Okay, you can just go in and do that. But with what we're going to do today, we do rely on it doing a Clear Audit Trail first. So a Clear Audit Trail is essentially the process of moving transactions from your software. Okay, bear with me one. Apologies for that. So these transactions are removed from the transaction window, or which was previously called the audit trail screen. This Clear Audit Trail will only remove these transactions if you meet certain criteria. Okay, and it's an actual process you go through. So the criteria it has to meet is for a transaction to be removed, it has to be prior to the date chosen. Now, when you run a Clear Audit Trail, this is what you're in charge of. You are in charge of what date you're clearing these transactions up to, okay? So you might want to leave a couple of years, you might want to leave 5 years live data. That is entirely up to you. What it won't let you do is bring it into the current financial year, okay? So you do need to make sure that you've got a full financial year on there. So if the transaction's prior to that date, it could potentially remove it. But it also needs to be fully paid. So if it's an invoice, it either needs to be attached to a payment or to a credit note, and or if it's if it's things like a credit note, again, it needs to be linked to an invoice. So always looks at these transactions and make sure that they're paid off against one another. Next, they need to be bank and VAT reconciled. Okay, so if it's a bank transaction, so for example, a bank payment, a bank receipt, it could be a customer receipt, it needs to be bank reconciled if that bank is switched on for bank reconciliation. You can switch the bank account off though. And then also VAT reconciled. So if it's a VAT transaction, depending on your VAT scheme, that also needs to be marked as reconciled. And then finally, not allocated to another transaction that doesn't meet the criteria. So for example, you might have an invoice that is meeting all of the criteria, however, it is allocated to a credit note which maybe doesn't meet one of the criteria, for example, the date, in which case the invoice won't remove because of that. So Clear Audit Trail, I'll show you in just a moment, is easy to run. It may take some time. It might be something you have to walk away and leave for a little while to run through, but it removes the transactions from the audit trail window, but it also removes it from your supplier, your customer, and your nominal account records in the activity window. And we'll see that in just a moment there. Okay, so this is where, so a quick question there. Do you have to run the clear audit trail prior to doing any of the procedures which we're moving on to? So I'm just going to demonstrate that now for you. Okay, I've got a really good example of before and after. Okay, so if you hang fire, we'll show you that. Okay, so I'm going to share some data now. I'm going to do a pre-clear audit trail data set first. Okay, so I want to give you some examples just so you can see what we mean by this. So I've just brought this data set across. As you can see, it says pre-clear audit trail or pre-cat at the top. So this has not run through a clear audit trail at all. And I've got some examples to use for you here today. So first of all, if we have a look in help and then in about, we can find out some information about when a clear audit trail was last run. So if we look in the configuration information section here, if we scroll down, you can see the clear audit trail date. So this will tell you if a clear audit trail has been run. And as you can see, it's got NA there. So that means this hasn't been included in a clear audit trail before. So I know that this is just a continuation of data. Now I'm just going to go into my customers first of all as an example. Okay, so I've got my customer list, which isn't huge, but it's just a sort of sample portion. And what we've got is a list of customers here. And we've got some customers that have got a zero balance on them. Okay, so that's a really good indicator that we're probably not using that customer anymore because there's a zero balance on them. Not always, but it's a good indication. Now what I can do to this window here is I can actually sort this window into balance order. Okay, so at the moment it's alphabetical. I'm just going to change this into balance order. And as you can see there, that's organized mine from the lowest balance, and it's highlighted all my zero balance customers here. So you can see there's a few potentials there, and I might be able to tell by looking at them, actually, that one has just genuinely paid all their invoices. But if I have a look at this one here, this is one I've set up earlier, if I just log into this one and into the activity, we can see on the activity, we've got some transactions. Okay. So in here, these transactions are cancelling each other off because we've got an invoice and a payment, and that's why the balance is zero. But we haven't actually dealt with them since 2018. Okay, and it might just be it was a one-time sale that we made, and we've actually not continued that relationship. There could be a whole heap of history, but again, it's maybe stopped at a later date. Now, what happens if I try to delete this? I'm just going to try and delete this one on its own. We can highlight and go to delete. Is I get an error. Okay, and it tells me the 4 possible reasons why I can't remove that customer. Okay, so the most common ones are the top 2. So first of all, a balance remaining on the account. Well, you can see quite clearly there is not a balance on there. The second one is transactions still associated with the account. So as we saw before, Steve, when you asked that question there, we can't remove this until those transactions are removed. And the process of removing those transactions is the clear audit trail. Okay, so it's almost like clear audit trail is step 1, and this is step 2. It could be that the account is associated with a project record. So if you've got projects activated and you're using projects, you'll need to have a look at your projects just to see if that customer was linked to any of your projects. And finally, a direct debit mandate has been associated with the account. Again, not as common because this is only if you're using Go Cardless functionality. Okay. So what I'm just going to do then, I'm going to briefly show you that clear audit trail process, and then we'll look at the same data set in a data set which is run through the clear audit trail. The first recommendations I have for you before running anything in terms of removing data, clearing data out, is first of all to take a backup of your data, make sure there are no errors in the data by checking the data, and also to archive the data. Now, archiving the data is a method of taking another copy of your data, which sits alongside your live data set for read-only purposes. So a common question we get is, what would happen if I got VAT audited, okay, and I wanted to look at some transactions from 7 years ago? Then we can use the archive for that. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail on the archive today because, again, in its own right, that is its own session, okay? But I will show you how to quickly take one. So in this pre-clear audit trail data, what I'm just going to do, first of all, take that archive by going into Tools, Period End, and Archive Company. And I can't change the location, but I can change the description and the folder if I wanted to. So as you can see, I'm on a slightly older data set there, 2023. So I'm just going to say OK to that. And that's archive my data. And that can be accessed through File, Open, and then Company Archive. Okay, so the clear audit trail that we're going to run today, we're going to do this up to the end of 2021. Okay, so that would give us 3 years live data. So I would go into Tools, Period End, and then into Clear Audit Trail. Now, as I mentioned, you get to control the date that you run the Clear Audit Trail for. So here it's asking you, what date do you want to run this for? I'm going to leave that as it is. And like I say, that's going to look at all transactions up to the end of December 2021. Okay, now another of the criteria I mentioned is bank reconciliation. Okay, so we'll look at transactions, and if the bank account they use on that transaction is meant to be reconciled or switched on for reconciliation, if they haven't been reconciled, it won't clear them. Okay, so as you can see, I've got some that have never been reconciled here on this one. So what I can do is just switch that off, okay, and that will eliminate a lot of the transactions that don't get cleared. So I'm just going to switch those all off because you can see I haven't used this one for a long time. And that clear audit trail will run through and remove those transactions that meet these criteria above. So I'm going to quickly run that, but then I'll jump into the other data set so I can show this for you. So I'm just going to proceed, even though I've got a log date on there, and it's just forcing me into that backup there and checking data. Okay, so it forces us into them because it recognizes we're doing a really big routine on the data here. We're going to be removing transactions, so it's best to have a point of return just in case something goes wrong along the way. Okay, there you go. So that process has removed 770 transactions. Okay, so I'm 770 transactions fewer than there was before. And that is essentially your clear audit trail. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to move on to my other data set, which is my post clear audit trail data set. So I'm just going to pull this one across. It will look very similar. I can find it. There we go. So you can just see it now says post clear audit trail, and it's just because I've set a few things up on here. The first thing I want to look at is in help and about. Okay, now in help and about, what we're looking for again is that clear audit trail data. So you can see now in this data set, we've got a cleared data of 2021. Okay, so we know that that has been run on this data set. What we'll also see in our transactions list is we'll see some opening balances. So when you do a clear audit trail, it does post a set of opening balances. So these are quite common after running a clear audit trail. So let's get back to sort of the main job here, which is removing customers, suppliers, and nominal codes. So I'm going to go back to that initial customer. Okay, we had an initial customer, this one here. Now, if you remember earlier, this would not delete. Okay, we got an error when we tried to delete that. But what I just want to show you now is the same customer. If we go into activity, post clear audit trail, you can see now the activity is clear. Okay, so that to me means we're more likely to be able to remove this one. Now, deleting records in customers, suppliers, and nominal codes can be as simple as, if they've got a zero balance and they meet all the other criteria, highlighting them and going to delete. Okay, so it is a simple process, but there's a lot to understand in the background prior to doing that. However, it's unlikely that if you've got quite a few customers, you want to sit and go through them one by one. Okay, so you might want to have a bit of a bulk clear out. So what I just want to highlight there is at the bottom, I have currently got 57 customers. Okay, I'm going to try and do a bulk clear out of some of these customers now. To do that, what I'm going to do is just click on clear, and that means nothing is highlighted. And now this time I'm going to swap, and that means everything's highlighted. Okay, and what we often get is, well, I'm really nervous about that because I've now highlighted everything and I don't want to delete everything. Okay, but remember, it won't delete them unless they meet the criteria. Okay, so it won't just delete someone who you've got an active relationship with, because they'll have activity on them. So I've highlighted everybody. Okay, and I'm going to go to delete. Am I sure? Yes, I am. Remember, we've got a backup, so if it doesn't go right, we've still got a point of return. But as you can see, we've got the same error message there. So we've got the message indicating there's 4 potential reasons why you can't remove the records. So I'm going to say OK, because although it's given me that message, it has still managed to delete some of them. If you look at the bottom here, I'm just going to circle that for you. We've actually managed to remove 20 customers. So 20 customers did meet the criteria for removing, so they had no balance on them, they had no activity left, they had no direct debit mandate, and they weren't attached to a project. Okay, so 20 of them have removed, and that's much better than going through individually and trying to delete one by one. It's a bit of a quicker process. And as you can imagine, if you've got a larger data set than me, you probably have more than 20 that you need to remove. So it's exactly the same for your customers, your suppliers, but you're going to get slightly different messaging when it's giving the reasons for non-removal. So again, I'm just going to highlight again. So I'm just going to swap them all and go to delete. So this time we started off with 31. And this time we don't have as many reasons. We've got the balance, we've got transactions, but also we have that they're set up as a subcontractor third party. Okay, so if you're using the CIS module, you may also find that that causes a barrier for you. I'm going to click on OK, and as you can see, we're down to 19. So some of them did meet the criteria again. So the next one I'm just going to show you is nominal codes. Okay, so again, very, very similar process there. Removing nominal codes, they need to have a zero balance, and we need to have all history removed from there. So if we look at, for example, just my main nominal code, you can see I've got history going back really far, but also right up to this date here. So we haven't been able to clear down a lot of these older invoices. There could be various reasons why they haven't cleared down, but they haven't. So in which case, when I try to delete this particular nominal code, we get our reasons, and this time we have a few more reasons. So again, we've got the same around the balance, the transactions, but then we've also got that they could be nominal codes that are used by features of the software. So the first one is a control account. So there are certain nominal codes that are what we call a control account. So when you do a posting, the other side of that posting has to post somewhere automatically. So there are certain control accounts set up in your software, and I'm going to show you that in just a second there. Direct debit manager. So when you set up Go Cardless, you need to specify a nominal code, and it may be that you've specified the one you're trying to delete. And the same with invoice payments and the CIS module. So each time you set up those features, you need to specify a nominal code, and if they're in use by those features, then we'll not be able to delete them. So control accounts, if I go into settings and control accounts here, you can see what your control accounts are. Okay, so these are the ones that will not be able to be removed because they've been assigned. Some of them you can change, some of them you can't. Okay, so things like your debtors control account. When you post a transaction, it automatically does a posting to your debtors control and your VAT account, and it takes care of it for you based on the fact that you specified the control account. Now again, same process for deleting nominal codes. It won't delete anything that's in use. Okay, it can't. So again, we can do the same process. We can go to swap and then delete, and it will delete those that it can. That's taking a little bit longer because I think I do have a lot of nominal codes that aren't in use. So we did have 138, we're now down to 68 nominal codes. So that's basically how easy it can be to delete some of your records. I think the tricky part of it is getting those transactions out of the software, making sure you're running the clear audit trail to the right date to remove them, but also understanding those links that it can have to other transactions that don't meet the criteria can create a bit of a web of unreconciled or unremovable transactions. And there are reports that can help with that if you find yourself in that situation. So I'm going to jump back to the slides now for a moment, just play catch up here. So I've got some slides there that just talk you through those. Jumped ahead, I do apologise. So what you do have as an alternative is the option to mark records as inactive. Okay, so you might find, I can't remove this one. It's too much of a web around the transactions that we can remove, but I don't want it on my reports. I don't want it in my main windows. I want to sort of try and hide it where possible. So what you can do is mark it as inactive. And once it's marked as inactive, it can then be hidden from things like your customer list, your supplier list. Again, there has to be certain criteria met in order for you to make an account inactive. So it can't have a balance sitting on there. Okay, you do need to clear a balance. A quick question there is, can you archive a supplier or customer rather than a delete? So archiving a customer or supplier doesn't remove them. Okay, taking an archive just takes a copy of that data set for you to go back to at a later date. So yes, they will be included in an archive, but it's not going to achieve anything in terms of removing data from your software and making your software run quicker. And I'll be honest, it's one of those concepts. Lots of people struggle to sort of understand the difference between archiving and removing data. So don't worry if you're not quite getting that, because you're not alone with that one. But archiving doesn't delete data when it comes to Sage accounts. I can appreciate that terminology is used elsewhere for removing data, but it won't remove anything. So let's just show you inactive records. So just find my software again. I'm going to go back into my pre-clear audit trail data because I think I've just deleted everything that was worth making an active. So if I go into customers and I have a customer who has a zero balance, for example, what I can do is in their record is mark them as inactive. And in this little icon here, it does give you a link to more information. Okay, and that further information tells you all of the reasons why an item might not be able to be marked as inactive. But if I tick the box here and save, it's allowed me to do that one. I can tell that because when we're looking at our list, you can see in the inactive column, you can see we've got the option of a Y. I was just having a quick look there because a question came through and it literally preempted me there. Is can you make several accounts inactive at once? Well, you can if you're on professional. I think standard as well, but not on essentials, okay? And that's if you have the option for batch changes. So that's along the top normally. Sometimes it's grouped together like mine is. What you need to do is highlight the records you want to mark as inactive. And it's not just inactive records, there's other things you can change using batch changes. So I've highlighted these two here. What I could do is go into batch changes, and that will change anything that's not grayed out. So I can't change the account reference. I could change the company name to something like don't use any longer, or do not use was what we used to pop in. So I can change those that aren't grayed out, but all I'm going to do is inactive and save. And then it's just warning me it's going to change multiple records. And as you can see, it's done 2 at the same time. And you could do that for quite a few, providing they meet the criteria. What we can then do is in this top corner here is remove it from the main list by unticking this box to include an act. So that's another possible fix. And again, we've done a dedicated session on inactive records. So check out the recording on that one too. Okay, just going to very briefly talk about compressing data before we move on to our summary. So that was a great opportunity if you've got any questions to get them across to us there. Okay, so compressing the data is where I bring out my analogy. And this is where when you've deleted files, you've sort of taken items out of the file, but you haven't really regained any space. So I always use my analogy of the bookshelf and taking the books off the shelf, but kind of leaving those gaps in between the books. When you do a compression, what that does is it sort of pushes the books together and regains that space on the shelf for you. So that's what you would do with your data, is we delete the files, then we do a compression. We always need to make sure we've got a backup before the step, and also that you check your data before running into a compression. So again, I'm going to just demonstrate this very quickly. Let's find the option. So the option for this is in File, and then Maintenance. Probably not somewhere you go often, but in here we've got some of the routines and tools we'll use when things tend to go wrong. So I'm just going to go into compressed data. Like I say, make sure you've taken your backup, and we can remove the tick from compress all because we're going to focus in on the area we've deleted items from. So we haven't done products or invoices. We've really just done records for the sales, purchase ledger, nominal ledger, bank, and audit trail. So we call them the top 5. Okay, if I'd gone and removed a load of sales orders, then I would just compress sales orders only. Okay, focus on the area you'd be working on. I run the compress and it does that shuffling in the background. Okay, so you won't see anything different after this. All we'd recommend is do another check data after, make sure you've got no errors after running the compression, and then just take another backup to be on the safe side. But it will look identical to how it did before. Okay, exactly the same. It's a background routine, so you won't see any benefit, but if you don't do it, you're going to be leaving those gaps in your data. Okay, so I'm going to pop onto the summary now. And then I've got some exciting news about our next badge. So there's lots of links available for you. So again, they're in the handout if you want to take a copy of those. Just want to remind you that this is optional and you don't have to do this just after year end. You might get 6 months through the year and decide to do this. It's not tied to it, okay? The one it is tied to is your clear audit trail. But it will allow you to work more efficiently in your data set because you're not filtering through 10, 15 years of data. You may be only doing it through the last 3 or 4. Always make sure that you've got a backup of your data, you've checked the data before, and also that you've got the archive as well. That archive can be easier to access than a backup. Okay, so do have someone who just had a question there about the archive and is it the same as a backup? Backups are similar, but the archive can be easier to access. You don't need to restore it into anything. Okay, a backup you need to restore into a data set. Okay, records, like I said, will only clear if they meet certain criteria, and that goes for clear audit trail and also for customers, suppliers, and nominal codes. And if an item can't be removed because perhaps the clear audit trail can't clear it down because it's not meeting one of the criteria, then you can move mark items as inactive there. And that final step of compressing the data will allow you to reclaim any disk space too. Okay, that brings us to the end of the content for today. We do have a few more minutes left for any questions you may have. So what I'm just going to briefly talk about is our upcoming webinars and also our additional support. So I'm just going to very quickly show you the Help Centre. sage.co.uk/help has all of our help files, and there's lots of support on here. In particular around financial year end, there's a section here on housekeeping tasks after running year end, and that will have links into various articles and support sites for you. We've also got our upcoming webinars, so you can type into the Help Centre wherever you are, the word webinars, and that will take you to our webinars options. You also have sage.co.uk/webinars. This hosts all of our webinars for accounts, but also for payroll and HR as well. So it's just on a bit of a go slow, so I'm just going to quickly, I was just going to open up another page there, bear with me 1 second. I'll just move that across there so I can get another page and see if we can get the webinars page open for you. And if not, then we've got a lovely video from our Matt on the team who's going to just talk you through our badge. Just bear with me 1 second. Just try this one again. So this is our webinars page. Just bring that across in just a moment. Yes, it is playing ball. So this is our webinars page. Our webinars page here will give you access to the recordings, but also to the live sessions. I wanted to just highlight payroll because we do have payroll year end coming up soon. So if you've got any colleagues in payroll, they'll maybe want to take a look in here to see what we've got coming up. If we pop into the live ones for accounts, just so I can very quickly show you what we've got coming for the rest of the week and also into next week. So I mentioned earlier, we are doing invoices, orders and quotes. That is tomorrow morning, followed by clearing stock in the afternoon. Next week, we're looking at VAT. We have 3 VAT sessions and we do have some further clearing record sessions. In fact, there you go. We've got one on inactive records on the 29th there. Okay. Beyond that, we do have our banking series, okay? And I'm going to leave this to Matt here. So I'm actually going to play you a very short video, just gives you a bit more information about that.
We have some exciting news for 50 accounts users. Are you ready to revolutionize your banking experience? Join us for an incredible journey through 8 sessions from February the 4th right through to the 20th, designed to streamline processing and enhance efficiency. Simply attend 6 out of the 8 sessions and a quiz to test your knowledge, and you will earn your very own Digital Banking Excellence badge. This will be added to the new Accredible portal, where you can collect and manage all your badges. From here, you can share your badges with colleagues, clients and suppliers to show your progression to becoming a Sage expert. Imagine a world where your bank transactions are simplified. Now, throughout these sessions, you'll dive deep into topics like simplifying bank transactions, managing customer receipts and supplier payments, mastering bank reconciliation, and revolutionizing your bank by automating with bank feeds. We'll show you how to simplify your routine with bank recurring items and how to correct bank errors. Harness the power of e-payments and add your bank information to invoices for faster payments. Don't forget, to earn your digital badge, you need to attend at least 6 out of these 8 sessions and complete the quiz. Transform the way you work with the bank, get paid faster, and automate your processing with Sage 50 accounts.
Okay, so if you want to register for those sessions, they're available on our main webinar page towards the bottom. If you scroll down, as you can see here, you'll see the badge and you can see each of the sessions there. So you can register for the ones that suit you best. Just remember, you do need to attend the minimum number, which in this case is 6 out of the 8 sessions plus the quiz to earn the badge. Okay, we're running them across a period of 3 weeks. We have got multiple sessions available for each one so that you've got a choice of dates and times. Okay, so there is a quick question there that I think Michael's just finishing up. And once we've done that, we'll look to end the session there. In the meantime, I just want to say thank you very much for joining us. We really do hope you'll join us for the next badge. They're proving exceptionally popular. And if you are interested in a payroll badge, we have just started one this week. Okay, so again, find that on the payroll page, sage.co.uk/webinars, and go onto the tile for live webinars for payroll, and you'll be able to get yourself registered for that particular badge as well. And that's on statutory payments. Okay, so if you want to sing that one, do get yourself registered. Okay, so I think that is all of our questions answered there. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. Take care, and we'll see you on another session really soon. But bye for now.